Hello and welcome to this special broadcast on the inquest into the death of anti-apartheid activist Ahmed Timol in police custody in 1971. The family has never agreed with the findings of the original inquest, which ruled his death a suicide. Now a new inquest has exposed serious cracks in the security police's version of events. I'm Valerie Robinson. Here to tell us more, I'm joined by Timol's nephew, Valeriecajeeinterview. Welcome, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
So tell me, it's been 3 weeks since the start of the Ahmed Timol inquest. How is the family feeling about how it's been going up till now?
It's been emotional, Valerie, to sit and listen to the testimony of political detainees who were arrested with our beloved Uncle Ahmed, to listen to them relive their ordeal in police custody, the tremendous torture, the physical torture, mental torture that they had endured because of my uncle's activities. And it brings back a lot of painful memories. So the last 3 weeks have been very tough, have been very emotional, mentally draining, exhausting, but it's something that has to happen.
And this has been a long time coming. I mean, it's been 46 years leading up to this. Is this what you expected to come out? Is this what you were hoping for?
Look, the family has had absolutely no doubt since the matter occurred in 1971 that my uncle's death was not a natural death. And the testimony of the political detainees during the duration of the last 3 weeks have reaffirmed that particular view. And we should not forget the testimony of Paul Erasmus, the former security branch officer who confirmed his own role in torture of other political detainees, not Ahmed Timol, but many, many other political detainees. The beatings, the torture, the break-ins, the discrediting, the smearing of political activists, the smearing campaigns, Stratcom operations, and so forth. So it just brings back those painful memories that the Timol family and many, many other families had endured during the oppressive days of the apartheid regime.
And yet, no, the Timol family never agreed with the findings of the police. You even went on to hire a private investigator. So what evidence came up that allowed for this inquest to finally take place?
Look, we had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission in 1996, and we should not forget that none of the perpetrators had applied for amnesty relating to my uncle's death. So that was a perfect opportunity that we had slipped as a country where perpetrators would have come forward and have made full disclosures. In 2002, I had written to the National Prosecution Authority and again asked them to reopen the matter because I believed that there was sufficient evidence, and most importantly, the security branch officers involved in my uncle's arrest and detention were alive at the time. And again, my application was rejected. And hence, in 2009, I made contact with Yasmin Suka, the former TRC commissioner, who I engaged extensively to tell her that we as a Timor family felt it's important that we sought her assistance to ensure that we reopen the inquest. And with the assistance of Yasmin Suka and the Foundation for Human Rights, we appointed our own team. We had our own private investigator. We had our own legal attorney who's representing us in the inquest, Howard Vani, and we conducted our own investigation. And the investigation simply meant that we had accumulated all the evidence that was surfacing on the table for many, many years, the testimony of other political detainees, most importantly that of Dr. Salim Issou, who was in the car with Ahmed Timol when they got detained and who was brutally tortured. So his testimony was very critical. And we packaged all this evidence together, and we made an application to the National Director of Public Prosecutions in January 2016. And Advocate George Bezos had accompanied us to also make a presentation. And hence, in October last year, Mr. Sean Abrams, the National Director of Public Prosecutions, accepted our application, and hence, we're in the process of concluding this particular inquest.
You take a few steps back. You mentioned the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Do you feel that this inquest has exposed the unfinished business that was left behind by the TRC?
Most certainly, because the platform was created in the country for perpetrators and victims to come together, for the country to reconcile. But the important matter here is that there had to be full disclosure. So the perfect platform was created, and we expected that the perpetrators responsible for my uncle's death to have come forward. But in our particular matter, none of the security branch officers ever applied for amnesty. None of them were ever subpoenaed. And my grandmother made a valiant plea, wanting to know what really happened to her beloved son. And nothing transpired regarding the actual information pertaining to his death. The wish that she made of having a school renamed after him was fulfilled in 1999 when President Mandela renamed the Azadville Secondary School the Ahmed Timol Secondary School. But the most important issue of her testimony was wanting to know what happened to her son. And this, unfortunately, the TRC did not pursue, and the security branch officers, and all of them were alive in 1996, were never subpoenaed and hence never came forward.
And can you just take us through the sequence of events at the time of Timol's arrest and subsequent death? Was the family ever intimidated or threatened?
Look, just to give you the context of Ahmed Timol's arrest, he's an educator at the Rhodoput Indian High School. He leaves the country in December 1966. He goes to Saudi Arabia to perform his pilgrimage. He thereafter goes for a short stint to Egypt. And thereafter he ends up in London in April 1967. And he lives with his close friends, Isup and Aziz Pahad. He falls in love with a British woman by the name of Ruth Longoni. And he continues teaching sub-Saharan students and immigrant students in the United Kingdom. Up till 1969, when he then accompanies President Thabo Mbeki and Ann Nicholson, and they've been selected to go for political training at the Party Lenin School in the Soviet Union. So for a period of 9 months, with Ann Nicholson and President Thabo Mbeki, Ahmed Timol does political training. After they return and they come back to the United Kingdom, the South African Communist Party leadership make a decision that Ahmed Timol should return to South Africa to build underground structures for the banned South African Communist Party. And he then ends his relationship with Ruth, who he's madly in love with. He comes back to South Africa in February 1970, goes back to teaching at the Rhodoput Indian High School, but now starts setting up underground cells for the banned South African Communist Party, which simply meant that he started distributing political literature. And we should not forget that this is a time after Rivonia, where all forms of political opposition in the country has totally been crushed. And the message from London to the citizens and the oppressed majority in the country is that the African National Congress and the South African Communist Party is alive. And then Ahmed Timol starts distributing literature. There's no social media, there's no Facebook, there's no Twitter, and he distributes it in the form of mail, in the form of a mailing list. So throughout the country, people receive political literature about messages of the African National Congress and the South African Communist Party. And he does this work for a period of approximately 18 months. On the 22nd of October 1971, the police alleged that at a routine roadblock, purely coincidental, purely by chance, they stopped this yellow Anglia, and in this Anglia they find these two Indians, Ahmed Timol and Salim Isup. And when they search the boot of the car, they find banned political literature. And this then leads to the arrest. But it's important for me to stress that what has emerged during the inquest in the last 3 weeks is that there was a detention order for Ahmed Timol. And correctly, as Judge Billy Motley had stated, that if the detention order had stated that Ahmed Timol had to be kept in a cell at John Foster Square Police Station. But what's very surprising is that the detention order was not executed, because they could have detained him at the house or they could have detained him at the school where he was teaching. They set it up in the form of a routine roadblock, creating doubt that it was purely by accident that they detained my uncle. And this brings a whole range of pertinent additional questions that have got to be asked. But that I will deal with in the second publication of my book. So my uncle that gets taken into police custody, 22nd of October 1971. They get taken to Newlands Police Station, where he and Salim Isup are taken. They are then booked in and then they are separated. Separately taken to John Foster Square Police Station. Nearly 4 days later, Salim Isup is comatose. He's unconscious. He's got to be rushed to the local hospital in Johannesburg. Thereafter, he's then taken to the hospital in Pretoria. A day later, police allege, during normal routine interrogation, without laying a single finger on him, the environment is calm, there's some examination, cross-examination taking place. João Rodrigues, a salary clerk from Pretoria, comes to the police station to bring salary checks for Captain Gloin van Niekerk, and also a sealed envelope with some very pertinent information relating to the operation. A certain Mr. X walks into the room. Gloin van Niekerk then leaves the office. My uncle then gets bewildered and totally shocked by the information that is mentioned and the names that have been mentioned. The salary clerk is then left all alone with this most dangerous communist at the time. And as he's recollected for more than 2 days, giving us some concocted version, that he's left alone and they're sitting across the table, having a cup of coffee, and then my uncle asks that he wants to go to the bathroom, and then makes a dart across the table, and in a very quick motion, he opens the closed window and jumps to his death. And this is the version that João Rodrigues has testified at the inquest in the last few days.
And during that time, I mean, the family had no knowledge of where he was or what was happening to him. I mean, was the family ever harassed by police?
So on the 22nd of October, he gets taken into police custody at around 2300 hours in the evening. The early parts of the morning, the security police come for the first time to the flat. And they ask my maternal grandparents, where's Ahmed? And they say, but he's in the room, he's sleeping. And when they go in the room, they see his bed is made, and he's not there. But they know very well that he can't be there because he's already in police custody. So from the Saturday morning, early parts of the Saturday morning, the 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, up till the 27th, they're regularly raiding the flat, different hours, taking my grandfather into police custody for interrogation. My other uncle Harun's taken to John Foster Square for police station, searching the entire flat where they lived, questioning the domestic workers that were working in that particular building, looking for documents in the flat, coming different hours. So it goes on until the 27th of October, when in the afternoon, the security branch officers just tell my grandmother that your son is dead and send your husband to come and identify his body. But importantly, Valerie, the day before, in one of the numerous visits, one of the security branch officers tells my grandmother that you had failed to give your son a hiding, and we're going to give him a hiding. And a day later, they come back and they push her down on her chair and say, your son is dead, and ask your husband to come and identify the body. So this is on the 27th of October, 1971, which is a Wednesday.
We know this is not an isolated incident. I mean, why do you think other families that suffered a similar hell kept quiet?
Look, in the Timor matter, there was an inquest, and that inquest only took place because of local and international pressure that was mounted on the apartheid government at the time. And they were forced to then hold an inquest. And for many, many other political detainees, there were similar inquests, and not always so high profile. But obviously, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was the perfect platform for all these cases to have been investigated. And none of them were investigated. I think the one exception was the Steve Biko case, where the perpetrators were charged and so forth.
Yes, this is opening a hornet's nest, this entire inquest. So what is your takeaway from the past 3 weeks?
Look, it's a grim reminder of our horrific past. It's our tragic history. It's our painful past. And as a family, we were cautiously optimistic that when João Rodrigues comes and testify, he will finally reveal the truth. He will give us the full picture of what had transpired to my uncle. And we were very, very disappointed, because he continues to stick to his version of events, which he had narrated at the inquest in 1972. And for the first time this week, he now narrates that he was intimidated.
So what is your view of these cops that have stuck to their original inquest statement?
It is extremely painful, because we were cautiously optimistic to reach out our hand, asking them to come clean so we can reconcile and as a family find closure and move forward. But we are bitterly, bitterly disappointed, because he's clearly demonstrated no remorse. He's demonstrated it in his posture during the inquest this particular week, smiling in front of the cameras, having selective amnesia of events that have transpired, especially when Judge Pali Motley provided him with compelling evidence of the trajectory specialists, the pathologists, and again, he could not comment.
So what is that one thing that the family needs to find closure?
The perfect platform in this particular inquest was twofold. One was for João Rodrigues to give us the true nature of events of what had transpired. And that would have put into context as to what really happened, specifically to the events leading to my uncle's death. So that opportunity is lost because João Rodrigues has not prepared to come clean. We are now cautiously optimistic and eagerly awaiting a finding to be made by Judge Valeriecajeeinterview, which in our view would state that Ahmed Timol did not commit suicide, as stated by Magistrate de Villiers in 1972, but was rather killed in the care of the security police.
And do you believe this is going to open the floodgates for similar cases?
Most certainly, and it should. I mean, during the duration of this inquest, the family of Matthew Mabelani had approached us, and they'd actually approached Judge Valeriecajeeinterview. Their brother had also died at the same notorious John Foster Square police station, and also from the 10th floor. Their father is 95 years old, and he wants to know what happened to his beloved son. So most certainly, the Mabelani family, the Agat family, the Nokotula Similani family, and many, many other families are entitled to know as to what happened to their loved ones. And the government of the day have got a moral responsibility to ensure that support and guidance is provided to assist these families in finding closure.
And many of those families, I bet, were hoping for that kind of closure at the TRC. So following evidence from the pathologists and trajectory specialists, we now know that they believe that Timol could not have jumped out of that window. Do you believe this makes a mockery of the TRC?
Look, the TRC was a perfect platform, and the TRC had laid the foundation to follow up on many of these particular cases. But most importantly, the TRC had made many, many recommendations. And the reality is that those recommendations were never fulfilled. The TRC had many challenges, capacities, financial resources, investigative skills, and so forth. But the number of cases that they had followed through, numerous recommendations were made. And they all form part of the TRC recommendations that was given to the government of the day. And in our view, and the view of many other families, like the Kulumani Support Group, those recommendations of the TRC were not implemented. In the case of the Timol family, Ahmed Timol had no wife, he had no kids, his parents have passed on, and the Timol family has never sought financial compensation. But that cannot be said of many, many other families where they've lost breadwinners, who've got wives, who've got kids, who are urgently in need of financial compensation. So the need of each individual family differs. But the most important issue is that families want answers.
Do you feel vindicated by the testimony at the case?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because João Rodrigues has once again confirmed that the apartheid version of events supported by Magistrate de Villiers in 1972 was part of a cover-up, was part of a farce, it was part of collaboration between the security police and the judiciary. Exactly what Paul Erasmus stated, that they would actually prepare mock trials between magistrates and the security police. So when the actual inquest took place, it was all staged.
And how does it make you feel sitting in court, listening to the gallery, laughing at the responses of these police officers when there are difficult questions are posed to them?
It was extremely difficult since Monday, Valerie, to listen to Neville Els and João Rodrigues. Extremely painful, simply making a mockery of the entire inquest and expecting South Africans, 46 years after this event, to believe that they were not aware of any political detainee that was ever tortured, no idea whatsoever that there was police brutality of all political detainees, and a total I cannot recall. And they expect ordinary South Africans to believe their version of events. It's the furthest from the truth.
And if Judge Motley decides that and finds that he could not have jumped out of that window and that the police are in fact responsible, what do you want for criminal proceedings going forward?
João Rodrigues must face the full wrath of the law. He was warned on numerous occasions during the court proceedings this week by Judge Valeriecajeeinterview, by Advocate Howard Vani representing the Timol family, and he's made it very clear. He's sticking to his version. So from our perspective, he must face the full wrath of the law.
And that is despite the fact that the family earlier in the week said that you did not want prosecution, you just want the truth.
Absolutely. And till today, we will maintain that particular line of consistency. Because at the end of the day, 46 years have passed. My maternal grandparents have passed on. We want answers. We want answers. And he was the perfect person to have explained to us as to what had transpired.
And just looking back at the week, what do you think was the was the most brutal testimony to listen to from the family?
I think the testimony of all the political detainees. Remember, they were not directly linked with any of the underground activities of Ahmed Timur. Yet they had to endure this horrendous torture. And this had tremendously impacted on their lives without being directly responsible for any political work. And they are the unsung heroes and heroine whose lives have completely been devastated purely because of their association with Ahmed Timur. And there are many, many others throughout the length and breadth of this country who've suffered a similar fate.
And will there be more cases that you are going to be involved in coming up?
Most certainly. And as somebody who's been driving this particular matter, it will only be my pleasure to assist other families, because the pain and the suffering of the Timur family is only one. There are many, many other families throughout the length and breadth of this country that have suffered even worse fate compared to that of Ahmed Timur. And it's our moral responsibility to assist as many families as possible.
Now, listening today in court, a man testified that he believes that Ahmed Timur fell in the morning and not in the afternoon, as the police had testified. We know that you got into contact with that man, in fact, in your own investigation. How did you find him? Because he was never asked to testify in the original inquest.
Look, it's been an ongoing investigation lasting for many, many years. And it's not something that you actually plan for. It's something that you just stumble across. And it was another political detainee who I had interviewed. And she had then brought it to my attention that there was somebody who had actually witnessed this fall. And it was in this particular process where I had made contact with this particular individual who testified this morning.
And what do you believe is going to be the swaying factor? What do you believe was the most damning evidence that was presented in court?
2 forensic pathologists, 1 trajectory specialist, the testimony of other political detainees detained at the same time with Uncle Ahmed, have got no involvement in any of the political underground work, yet they are brutally tortured, sleep deprivation, not allowed to eat, not allowed to sit. And if this is what's meted out to them, Salim Isop, who is not even a member of the Communist Party, put in an unconscious state of being comatose. If this is what had transpired to them, so what do you think happened to Ahmed Timur, who took full responsibility? Because in his statement, which I have seen, he clearly takes responsibility that I'm a member of the South African Communist Party. I was responsible for distributing political literature. Do they then expect us to believe their version of events, that they never laid a finger on him? It can never be true.
Speaking of Salim Isop, who was arrested with him, we heard earlier this week that the advocate put it to one of the witnesses that he was almost a sidekick to Ahmed Timur. He was much younger, yes. He wasn't as well known, he hadn't traveled abroad yet, and Timur had record of traveling abroad, which would have influenced him. So he was much more the prize target. Yeah. We know that Esop's family filed that he was tortured after he landed in the coma in hospital. Do you believe the fact that they were found guilty, almost the same investigators who tortured Esop, do you think that brings more weight to the case, to the claim?
Most certainly. I mean, the 2 of them are detained. The one has got no involvement in any political underground work. He's purely at the wrong place at the wrong time and doing odd ends for my uncle. And he gets beaten to a pulp. And my uncle takes full responsibility, declares it in his statement, which I have seen. He acknowledges the fact that he's a member of the Communist Party, takes responsibility for all the political literature he had distributed. But we are of the view that the security police were looking for more information. And remember what Ronnie Castles testified. There were bucket bomb explosions that were taking place at that particular time. And my uncle was not responsible for those bucket bombs. But the literature found at the bucket bombs was the same literature found in his possession. And hence, the security police put a link together. But he could not take responsibility for those operations because he was not part of them.
Now we know the bucket bombs, which were buckets with literature in, which would explode, not be harmful to anyone, but distribute these pamphlets to a lot of people in that manner. Now we know that the police were trying to probe from that because it was a very big issue for them at that time. What training do we now know that your uncle received for these situations? Because the claim was that the SACP advised suicide rather than handing over any information.
Look, my uncle was well aware that he was under police surveillance. And this comes out as part of the research that I had done. And I think he had trained himself, preparing himself to be taken into police custody. And hence he had warned his younger brother, Uncle Muhammad, to get out of town because he knew that they were under surveillance. So he braced himself to be taken into police custody. And our view is that he had made full disclosures based on all the events and all the underground operations he was involved in. But from a security police perspective, they wanted more. And he could not take responsibility for operations that he was not part of. And I think this was the critical issue during the interrogation, because they wanted him to take responsibility for bucket bomb explosions in Durban, in Cape Town, in Port Elizabeth, and he denied that because he was not there. He was purely distributing using the mailing system. So the more they kept on asking him, the more he kept on denying. And we think it is that circumstances that led to him being beaten to such a stage where it's highly probable that he was unconscious. And hence, João Rodriguez's version that when he had seen him on that particular afternoon of the 27th, that he was fully clothed, he was healthy, he was agile and mobile, he could see no marks or bruises on his faces, could not be true. Because the anti-mortem wounds demonstrated by Professor Shakira Holland and Dr. Steve Naidu clearly demonstrated a broken jaw, the head already been beaten, the lip been cut, marks above the eye, the left ankle, most critical, the left ankle, already nearly broken. So how on earth could it have been that Rodriguez could have seen him fit and healthy, and yet he could dart across the table, open a closed window and jump to his death? Furthest from the truth.
So just in closing, can you just tell us what is expected in the weeks to come now? Because we know that tomorrow is the last day of testimony following the 3 weeks of very dramatic, sometimes traumatizing testimony from people that have survived as detainees, as well as experts and ex-police officers. So what is going to happen next?
Look, the judge has given me the honor to conclude the inquest by making my testimony tomorrow. And then we wait for dates from Judge Billy Motley as to when the legal teams will argue. I would imagine it will take at least another week or 2 weeks, but we should get confirmation tomorrow. And then thereafter we wait with bated breath for Judge Billy Motley's judgment.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, Valerie.
This has been the special broadcast into the inquest into the death of anti-apartheid activist Ahmed Timol. I'm Valerie Robinson. Thank you for joining us.